Manager's supposed to do it with the report and everything. Excuse me.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's April 27th, 2022, 6:31 in the evening, and I'm going to call to order the Clearfield Community Services District Board of Directors meeting. In attendance, we have Bill Palma-Mesa, interim general manager and water treatment plant operator extraordinaire. We have Chuck Jones, Erwin Fuss, and Johanna Trenery, along with myself, Cedric White, in attendance. To begin with, let us pledge allegiance. So on my three, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Very good. Now we will have open time, and we have open time beginning every meeting. Usually the government code S54950. So persons wishing to address the board on items not on the agenda can take to the lectern and maybe briefly share with us what they have on their mind. Mr. McVeigh.
Very good. First off, we request that some items be removed from the consent agenda and open for discussion. In particular, some of the activity reports and things. Which one? I'm sorry. Particular ones you want to remove?
I had December I wanted to look at, and September I wanted to ask a question about.
Okay.
We have some of those activity reports that we'd like to ask some questions about. Possibly also the revised budget for next year. Appreciate your work. I have some notes, but we'll get to that at the appropriate time. What I'd like to mainly bring up to your attention is now that we're getting our feet underneath us and the process of sending out letters to warn people that they could potentially have their water service turned off due to non-payment, I did some research because we have a number of people who are $6,000, $8,000, $12,000 behind. Most of those are meters that are locked off and they have not paid their bills in years. So I ran into a couple different water districts, and I ran into Government Code 61115B, and that lines up the legal process for the manager giving notice of filing a report and of the time and place for a public hearing. And it goes on there. I'll skip through quickly so we can get to more important things. But then it's the process of informing the public or the individual customer that they're behind by how much. There's a public hearing, the board gets to approve or give leniency, whatever they want. And then the manager turns the report over to the county tax collector, at which point county tax collector can then include the amount due to the district on the individuals or that parcel property tax bill for collection. Okay? And if they fail to, because they're not paying us anyway, if they fail to pay that within a couple of years, their property is subject to loss during a tax sale. So to me, it's just a process, a way of collecting back monies due to us. Mr. Palma-Mesa may be able to tell us, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot about approximately how much we might potentially gain from that. But it'd be nice to see all customers paying their fair share.
Okay. Well,
And that's what I have at this point.
thanks for bringing that to our attention. Yeah. We'll look to put that on a finance committee subcommittee meeting agenda in the future. Sounds good. Yeah. All right. Very good. Appreciate that, because that's a thorny issue. Very good. All right. Anyone else wishing to address the board director, please? Introduce yourself so the recording can hear.
I'm Sally Lund, and I help with the water company.
Sally Lund, very good.
And so, in response to what he was talking about, I have this one customer in particular that the older lady is in a home and they're caring for her or she came up to us, I'm only gonna be her, but you'll have to, collect it when she dies, and, in the estate. So I've had that response, And then, and same with, the 1051 or 1081 on the meters, it's like, all you have to do is look at the current bill, and it says 1081, 1081, and they're just not paying it, thousands of dollars. And what do you do about that? That's the thing where it seems like we need
This is
to
what you do.
either set a precedence and, stop those billings or something. It seems a little bit erroneous, because the likelihood of us collecting it, one person got burned out in the, Clover fire. They've been renting ever since, so she has no intentions of paying it, period. End of subject. So then, here we go, ching, 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 every month. What do you do about that?
Sounds like a worthy topic to wrestle with in its entirety.
Yeah.
Find some path forward that's kind of, that we can systematically use as an approach. Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Okay.
All right, very good. Just a second. I'm gonna make a note. I've taken note. All right, very good, because that's what remembering. Okey-doke, so new business, let's start, consent agenda. Can I have what do you all think of, can I have a motion to pull the 2 consent items off the?
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to make a motion, but which ones? I
It
know
was September and December, it sounded like, September 21 and 12/21.
There's another one in there, I don't know if it's October, November, but that's fine, because
Yeah,
you can probably explain it to him.
swell, yeah. So,
The activity reports,
yes,
9/21,
yes,
okay. And what was the other one?
12/21, and there's related issues to, on both October and 11 and November. And then there's a question about September, it sounds like.
Okay.
So I'm happy to pull all 3 or 4 and answer any questions that.
And I'd like to pull the minutes too, for just a clarification.
Okay,
I'd
very
like,
good.
check register 325.
325?
For a question. Yeah, it's dated 325.
Okay,
So reports,
And also the one dated, 415, check register. Just some simple questions for clarification.
so can I have a motion to pull the reports and bills and payroll minutes from the consent agenda, and we will get through each one of those items as they're raised.
and I'll second it.
Okay, very good, all in favor?
That's fine.
All right, so let's bring the items of interest on the consent, well, where do we want to address this? Let's address this under this will just become the new 5A. It'll be 4, let's talk about it now.
Yeah.
So what was the, who has questions?
This one is just a general question. McConnell Foundation, we bought 7 acres of water in March. I thought we were all done, but that was a bill. So we paid a bill.
121.
McConnell Foundation, we use 7 acre feet of surface water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Page ago.
March is the beginning of the new water year.
Oh, March was the beginning, got it, okay.
Okay,
All right, so let's go to December. So what I didn't quite understand was this account listing. Is this kind of like an activity report?
No,
Okay, because if you look at the account listing and it says checking 338,000 and change, and then if you take a look at your ledger, it's got only 206,000. So I didn't know what the difference was.
the program issues that account listing automatically. I just left it in there because that's what we were showing everybody. And are we looking at December or?
Yes, December.
Okay.
And then the merchant account was also off.
And can you repeat the question so maybe I can finance unit?
Okay, so under the checking, under your ledger,
Uh-huh.
it gives me an ending balance. And on your account listing for general checking, it gives me an ending balance or a value, and they're not the same. So I didn't know if I was looking at apples and oranges or what I was looking at.
General checkings.
And then you're talking about page 1, the cash and bank?
Yes,
Which line is cash and bank?
What is the item number on that, please?
the whole sheet, I can't.
I'm looking at the whole sheet, I just don't see
These-
cash and bank.
These two sheets. The cash and bank is what he said up here, it's up here.
Oh, okay. This is a different page.
So,
Oh, yeah, cash and bank.
yeah, you've got this one, and then you've got this figure. And the same thing for Richard County, it's off by a little bit too.
Yeah.
So we're talking the difference between the 206, 137 and the,
338,
okay.
yeah. That's,
$132,000.
I just didn't, just a little.
That's a good catch.
But there's another month that's also off, and I'm not quite sure which one it is, I'll look at it here in just a second. But, the other one, you've got, the cash and bank report, I think it's October,
Well, the difference is you're in a different, oh no, it's still period, it's the December period. Sorry.
let's see, it's October that's also off. But the merchant account and check, and then when you go to September, you don't even have an activity report so I can verify those numbers. There's no activity report in the packet for September. So I couldn't verify. Oh, that's a lie, I found something.
To say it was there.
But it's not, it doesn't give me cash and bank, or it doesn't give me, it was different, so I couldn't verify. Yeah, it's missing something. Can't tell you 100% what it's missing, but it's missing something.
This is in September.
There's a sheet missing in September. So I just didn't know what that meant. And then the other thing, and I know you have to understand, that Trinity PUD upset me terribly. So when you go and look at your data that you were collecting for Trinity PUD, very, very little was going into that line item that you look at. And so we know that the district was collecting a lot more than that. So I don't know if there's a formula that says maybe 0.003 goes into there from general checking into that PUD when we were all being charged 0.03 or 0.12 cents per 100 cubic feet. So I think the formulas need to be looked at on the programs, because I know that's wrong.
Are you talking about a per month?
Well, you look at, yes, if you look at your PUDs of what you show that came in, it's not going to be accurate, I don't believe.
What are you comparing that to?
My head.
Okay.
If you take a look at 2,500 customers at 29 units per month and 12 cents per unit, then it would be $8,700 a month collected.
And we're assuming everybody pays their bill in the same month?
No, that's why I picked only 2,500.
That's,
Just left.
right, so what you're seeing there is money coming in, that could be
That's
months
the
and months
actual
worth of
revenue.
payments.
But you're only showing $163 on some of the months that you have in here. So that's why it just didn't seem,
You're wondering if the formula's correct.
right. I'm just questioning the formula. I could,
I question it all.
yeah. Anyways, that was my big bugaboo. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Beverly, that's important to point I missed that.
If I may,
Appreciate it.
what I remember, the previous general manager saying was that there was an issue with the software on the computer. And so what happened was that was unable to get fixed. So once we go back far enough, or whether or not we've been able to correct that in the computer system,
We're charging it now.
Yeah, it's been removed, Chuck, but it's just the whole idea that it's there.
oh no, I understand.
So that was smoke and mirrors, and I'll talk to you later about the smoke
Well,
and
that's,
mirrors.
okay. No, well, I'll just take your word for it.
So, I guess it's encouraging to see. So on the Trinity, so if you look at September and you see,
I wanted to make a comment on what Beverly said.
I was just gonna point out that the month-to-date current year for September under PUD, it says $2, so presumably that.
When did the Trinity PUD get removed from the bills?
That's
It would have been when we went to,
January, February?
I was thinking June or July.
Was it that early?
when we did and when we should have, I think, are two different.
When it did, I think is January, February. When it should have was
But
when
from
the new rate
December to
structure.
February, you're all the way until we released, it was running at 12 cents instead of
Yeah.
what it had historically been at 3, even though the math worked out to .0017.
It was right before Skip left, so it was June, July, or August.
Yeah, and it wasn't, yeah,
I just wanted to make a little comment on that PUD.
yeah.
Skip was asked several times at meetings if he would separate the ag fee and the water usage fee. And it was always gonna happen, but like, Chuck said, the software was the blame,
Mhm.
and it never did get separated. But if you go back through your bills and figure your water usage, subtract it from the ag, when we had an ag rate, it's never the same. The ag rate is never the same. So there was other, fees being added to them, to that, yeah.
So we need to dig into the
And they weren't listed,
formula.
they weren't listed, and we were always.
Only if we're going back to charging customers.
Yeah, we need to have surface water, we have to have Euro water to get there.
Yeah, even one of the Zoom meetings,
Not this year.
someone even asked that, they be separated on one of the Zoom meetings earlier last year. And Skip assured him, yeah, that's gonna be taken care of. But, it never was. So they were being charged fees in that ag, billing that, weren't listed. We didn't know what they were. They never did add up whenever you just take the amount charged for ag water
Mhm.
and, subtract your usage. Ag fees never the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, so an idea might be on a
By the
monthly
time we meet
basis.
going.
Due diligence idea for that is maybe Chad, could just take a bill and see if it, you know, adds up relative to just, you know, manually test if the software's right, you know, off and on, and maybe you're doing that?
The Trinity PUD is not being calculated.
Well, no, not that, but just whatever other, you know.
Are we talking CVP or PUD?
PUD.
Yes.
CVP.
Thank you.
I think she was talking CVP. Were you talking CVP?
I don't know what fees.
We've lost ourselves.
We started with the Trinity PUD.
So,
So
sorry.
I can provide some insight on that, I think what you guys are looking at, because you're looking at a revenue, which is money coming in. So if a customer from a year ago already
We didn't really know.
was
what
charged the
that
PUD
was.
fee, we can't do anything about
Can't
that.
take this.
If they pay that bill now, a year later, it's gonna get recorded, so that entry will come out of the billing software and get put into the accounting software under PUD. And it might look like we're charging it for that month, but we're not, just somebody paid the bill. Good for them, but that's how it got recorded.
Okay.
Is that, I don't know. if
Yeah, no, that's useful, yeah.
Say that again?
Wow, we got.
If a customer from a year ago, on their bill, when they were charged for their normal water bill, that they would have had the Trinity PUD fee on their bill, and it was wrong. And they paid it a year later, recently. that's probably what we're looking at, is revenue coming back in. So as that payment gets put in or recorded into the billing software, it's good, part of that payment, when they wrote that check, is gonna be for that line item that was on their bill wrong. But they just paid it a year later, and it gets recorded, and as that value comes out of the billing software and gets entered into the accounting software, it's gotta go somewhere. And that's why you're seeing little bits and
Okay.
pieces.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yep.
Because Sally was sending letters out and people were starting to pay some of the old bills and that could account for some of
Okay,
that.
just so we all remember what item we're on the consent agenda. So reports, bills, payroll, minutes, which one of those do you want to address?
A couple of them, I'll start with, check register. Some of these are just very simple questions, partly for my own information. 325, check register, page 2. Just for my information, Brian Brown's printing had 2 separate bills totaling 2,200 or so. Is that a semi-annual, annual type thing? Can you tell us what those items were that were ordered?
The envelopes, the invoice paper, the return envelopes, door
Right.
hangers.
I understand. And is this something that you're trying to do annually or?
It's just as needed.
Or as needed? So,
They just redo an order.
and you're not necessarily privy to long-term as far as how often it happens, but that's okay. I understand. Moving on to 415, 2 questions, page 1. PG&E, it's a $25,128 payment, and it just says a booster station. Did that include the well, or is that simply the booster pump?
I believe the $25,000 payment was for the south booster.
Yeah, it just
I believe
says
that's what it was.
booster station was all, and I wasn't sure because I know it was difficult getting billing from PG for something, so I was kind of surprised to see that. And understanding that at current electric rates, it's more gonna be like 65,000 a month. So I was surprised about that. Then I've got one other question down lower, WINAC repayment of $50,000. Were you able to set up some sort of a quarterly or, whatever? Because that's definitely not the $215 that we owe every year.
Yep.
So I was just curious as to, was an agreement made with them, or are we just paying as we can?
Yep, there was no agreement. We're still waiting to hear back from the Bureau. We're just knocking it down.
I appreciate that. Can you give us an update on the approximate balance still owed on that?
$550,000.
Okay, so another 2.5 years at 215, approximately.
Correct.
Okay, because that's when that 188 would be coming off the bill.
No.
You're
No.
gonna
That's an
capture it?
That's a whole other discussion. I mean, we can join into this, and I
No,
may
we
be
don't have to.
for everyone, we can get into that. I guess we should talk about it. There's interest in the room. So, 188 was there, was put on our bill because we estimated it as what we would need to pay, each customer would need to pay to support a loan
With interest.
with interest.
Right.
And we were not creditworthy and weren't able to get a loan. Our obligation to meet the WIN Act required to secure our contract with the Bureau, which is the WIN Act contract. It's our contract with the Bureau, we need to secure that, is a $215,000 a year approximately payment to pay off the outstanding infrastructure obligations that the district has to the CVP, Central Valley Project. Because we weren't able to secure a loan, we are, and the district, or then the Bureau hasn't formalized a demand from us, and the Bureau knows that we're in a kind of a tough fiscal position, not able to secure a loan. We are doing our due diligence by paying on a quarterly basis around $50,000 a year. The 188 doesn't cover $50,000 a year.
No,
It's
61,000.
61, yeah.
so we are robbing some other piece of our financial books, if you will, to make those payments. I think that making those payments is absolutely critical. I don't think that we're fiscally sound enough to get a loan to go, a 20-year loan on this. It's enticing to fulfill this obligation over the next 2.5 years, because we would then avoid 5-6% interest on that money, and then the servicing of the loan, just getting it, which would be, they were pretty high priced. One was like in the $70,000 range. It was an insane number, it's usury really. That said, so we accelerate the payments, finish our obligation to the WIN Act contract with the Bureau. We only collect, do the math, and it's $61,000 a year at $1.88 for our 2,710 customers. 60. So we're short. We would have robbed our finances somewhere, to make those payments. So we need to make the district's finances whole by running that 188 until such time as we collected 61,000 times whatever, so many years, 11 years or something, 12 years, to get to the 600 and some odd thousand dollars that we had.
It'll be about 9 years.
Yeah, something like that. So it shortens that time period. We won't be paying $1.88 for 20 years or something and incur those extra costs. But it would be, we wouldn't have been balancing the books if we pull it in 3 years or 4 years or whatever, just in that compressed time frame. Because we wouldn't have collected that money from the customers. So that's the rhyme and reason why I would say no. In 2.5 years, we're not going to drop the 188 because it doesn't comport with basic accounting principles.
Okay, then moving back to the activity reports, it looks like we changed some formats somehow. I'm looking at my September activity report, page 3, and we have LY, CY, but then you go and you change back over to month to day, percent of revenues and whatnot. You drop the revised, and you do last year, percent of revenues and whatnot. And so that makes it a little harder to track some of these things, especially when you start looking at, moving down to the why is she here? I'm looking at, let me just take, sorry.
Yeah.
We're looking at penalties, and also the next line of them is penalties charged, and then penalties exceed, I'm assuming that's water allocation? Is that correct? WA allocation?
What page are you on?
Page 1, 1221, water services, you have installations, then penalties charged. Penalty exceed WA allocation, I'm assuming that's the water allocation.
Correct.
Okay, so these were revenues collected, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so year to date, it says $187,000 in penalties was collected. This is 1221. Following along the line, penalties exceeding water allocation, and it was 17.74% of revenue. So 1221, page 1, the activity report.
So the year-to-date amount of 287,403?
Right.
Yes.
So we collected that much in penalties, year to date. Then what were the penalties collected on the line above? Because that's only 506. Is there a breakdown or a difference between what those occurs? Because you weren't doing late charges.
I'm not sure.
And the question, what's the question? Those figures have been
I was
reported. What's the
questioning how
question?
much was collected, and the fact that
It's
we
posted there.
changed formats on how the activities came out, or the reported from September, and it changed back, let me take a quick look here. and it changed, the next month, I guess, October. The format.
I was back on
activity
December, we were talking about December,
report. Okay, but,
and now we've gone to September and
well,
October.
but, two different things, the penalties actually charged, and, the change in format for the
I
activity
can't,
report.
I'm struggling jumping back and forth.
Okay.
And
So
that's why I have.
That's why I'm wondering what the question is, do we need to not approve these and pull them for a finance committee meeting and really get into the weeds on this, because
We've had
This is-
questions as far as how much
this,
money was collected.
yeah, this is the first time
This
we've
is the
seen
first
this.
time I'm hearing these questions, so.
Yeah, this is the
I can
first time we've
provide a
seen
quick-
these, so-
Well,
quick
this is the
explanation.
first time I had a chance to review the activity reports.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
weren't available until.
And I'm feeling like that there's an appetite for a more detailed investigation and rehashing of some of these columns and stuff, so I would suggest,
I'm fine with that.
I mean, I don't know if there's an accounting need to approve them so that we can do business going forward, or can we pull them, send them to a finance committee, hash them all up and let them, I mean, Lord knows we haven't had them for
Well,
several months
Your
anyway, so-
penalty charges above that line item are gonna be the same thing I said before, it would have been people
Okay.
paying their old bills.
Right, old bills,
Correct.
fair enough.
Okay, and then are you questioning the 287,403, do I provide some backup on that, or?
I'm surprised it was that high, that we collected year-to-date through the end of last year, two
That's
hundred
a statement,
eighty-seven
not a question.
thousand dollars in penalties.
That's
Okay,
a statement, not a question. So,
Did we collect that much, actually?
There's the question.
well, thank you.
Did we really collect $287,000 in penalties?
room. Clarity, please.
I was gonna say, is there a way to put on the line items saying like delinquent payments, so delinquent penalties or delinquent post-payment, something like that, so you can, so that way you know that when it's 506.
we're not
that's
gonna dump a ton of time in this format, we're going to QuickBooks, which just has its own profit and loss.
I understand.
So I don't mind answering the questions, what would be awesome if I could get this ahead of time, then I could actually provide the
Yeah.
answers.
I spent 2 hours today reviewing.
I would like to move that, I'd like to pull these items from approval, and we'll hash these out at our next finance committee meeting. We have a full business agenda here, and this isn't productive in my opinion, so let's do that. They'll sit as is.
Yeah.
We'll have, hopefully, before the committee meeting, you can provide questions, maybe written up, so that
We'll work on it.
staff can get prepared, so that we're not just ad hoc, trying to answer
I
questions.
just wanted the questions out there. so that
Certainly,
we
you
can
know, and
Figure out what's where.
it's always a great idea to write the board or staff, or write staff, and they'll share that with the board. Write it down, because then we're all clear, we're much clearer on what the ask is, and we're not following along, we have a chance to look at what you're talking about and looking, you know what I mean?
Make copies, hard copies.
Or scan it send it electronically, I like that, but whatever it takes,
like
you know, so we're all on the same page when we're having the conversation, because
Fair
I
enough.
feel,
Fair enough.
yeah.
I don't mind it being in a finance committee, I just wanted to bring this up. There's been questions by the community.
Yeah.
How much have we collected?
Yeah, so maybe in the future, I would prefer something like, if you raise, you have a number of issues, you raise them without us trying to explain them, just make the request that they're significant and we can go to the finance committee or something, because, you know what I mean, I have a preference for not getting into too much detail at the board of directors meetings, details that are important, please, but if we can just set them up for our subcommittees, it'd be,
I wanna answer the questions, but if I had known that there was this many questions, which it's been a while since we've had a activity report.
true,
Yeah,
I could have had, Christie tag along.
yeah.
And
And it is gonna be a little bit
it would be nice.
interesting when we transfer when we go from one county to the next, are we gonna resolve all these questions?
We've been waiting for September's activity report, these others, for quite a long time, and I know the difficulties, but now we're just trying to understand.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to talk about,
I guess I'm dismissed.
Yes, you're just.
yeah, please. But thanks for raising them, I just don't feel like I'm getting much understanding myself, so I feel just sort of, I'm not sure where to go from here, except back to the finance committee, so we can all have this conversation in more detail, and a more intelligent one, because I'm feeling a little thick right now.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, very good, so we did have an issue with minutes.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Maybe we can approve minutes if we can get this figured out.
Well, in the January 5th special meeting, on page 3, down at the bottom, it just needs a little clarification. It says the standing committee meeting will be postponed for 6 months.
Yeah.
Actually, it's, since the choice of a new GM will be delayed for 6 months, because Bill has said he's gonna stay on for 6 months, then I suggested sending the letters to the general manager positions. That's why I suggested it.
Okay,
And that was back in January.
Yeah, back in January, that's right.
yeah,
He's not staying on.
That was just a clarification on that.
okay,
Because it says, Director Fuss, the standing committee meeting will be postponed for 6 months. Why? Well, because Bill decided that he is going to be okay with staying on as interim general manager for 6 months. So in that regard, I suggested we send letters to the general manager positions, and let them know that we're gonna be delayed. And the rest of the paragraph is fine.
yeah, all right, good. Did you share those particular edits with,
I will.
Maybe we drop that, oh, so we get that, I like the change,
Yeah,
just to make sure we capture that, when those minutes are revised. So, with that, is there a motion to only approve the minutes from the special meeting 1/5/22?
I'll make that motion.
Very good, Chuck's made a motion to approve the minutes from 1/5.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joanna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. We are on to new business, and it's gonna be 5A to start us out. There is a director vacancy, due to, our loss of David Salvadano as a director.
By the way, I
Still
spoke-
among the living.
Yeah, I spoke to Dave, he does have health problems.
Okay, darn, he's a real asset. I wish him the best, Dave, you're on the YouTube channel. We wish you the best. So with that, do you have some more color to add to that, Bill?
The vacancy's open, we created a flyer and advertised it, and it's part of the packet. And we have 60 days to fill the vacancy from when we learn of Dave resigning.
Okay.
And we can appoint somebody May the regular meeting.
Okay, very good. And we need to select a vice chair, because Dave served as vice chair.
Applications
You
around.
know, you could put that off until you appoint a new director.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Then we can move on tonight.
Yeah,
Take a sign on some committees.
another good idea, Mr. Fuss.
Why?
Make a motion for that.
We have
Yeah.
well, we have a public comment. Would you like to
Sure.
address the board?
Beverly Hicks, I didn't introduce myself earlier. My question is why? Even though you know you're gonna get a new board member on board, it's going to be one of the more experienced person that's gonna come in as vice chair. So just by delaying it another month really is of no benefit that I can see.
Gives a new director.
We
a
look
chance
forward to your
vote.
application as director.
You are
Well,
correct, you
I
are correct.
would you bring
Erwin.
it back to the board? Is there an appetite for?
Erwin had a comment that he was.
No, I just said, we have our chairman here tonight, so delaying it, till the next meeting will give 5 people a chance to vote.
Yeah.
That was all.
Yeah.
So you'll never vote, Erwin.
No, I won't.
Okay, I just, did you have a motion, John?
No, I'm going to agree with their request, about the lane until the next meeting.
Okay, so
Yeah, just so we can move on.
we're not gonna have any action on that. All right, 5B, drought water rate modification ordinance, 2022-02.
And I told you back, part of the consent agenda you did not approve was payroll.
We should probably figure out, did we have issues with the payroll? I mean, it's already gone out,
I
hasn't it?
didn't write down payroll, so.
Yeah, let's backtrack to that and have a motion to approve the payroll for 3/22.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the payroll of March 22nd.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Mr. McVeigh.
Thank you.
So, drought water rate modification ordinance, 2022-02. Bill, you wanna kind of summarize where we've been and where we ended up?
In short, we had a finance committee meeting and discussed the, $1.19 drought water rate, and there was a mistake made. It should have been $1.04. Yeah, but we've already given a 30-day notice. So the directors can discuss this and just approve the $1.04, and we'll just backspace twice and put in 04. It'll be that easy. We just made a mistake.
It did go before the finance committee meeting on the 14th of this month, and there was pretty well attended finance committee meeting. There was robust conversation about how the calculations are made. I think we came to an understanding of how that drought rate formula was put together, and came to the conclusion, at least obviously only, well, Erwin Bust attended as an interested party, but and you attended. Yeah, that's right, you were right there. Okay, amazing. All right, yeah, okay, and so the $1.04 made sense. I think that, in my opinion, Bill did a good job of threading the needle with the issue of labor at the water treatment plant, because the labor cost that you typically, you would put your labor cost, there's two types of labor costs that go into the fees that we pay. One is related to the water treatment, and that's put into our water rate formula. And then there's a labor fee that goes into the base rate. And the issue that's needed balancing from Bill was the fact that we're only going to treat, in theory, 1,120 acre feet of water, but the district expenses at the water treatment plant remain, you have the same amount of labor that's up there, whether you're treating a small amount of water or more water. And if you just use the 1,100 acre feet and the full amount of labor costs, you get a pretty large per unit cost to the customer. And Bill was able to, through his professional experience, able to fine tune that down and make that, correct me when I'm wrong,
I'm listening.
make that number more palatable for customers. And so that's how we had really, between that and correcting a water fee that was inaccurately included in the water rate, because water fees are part of the base rate, together allowed us to reduce the water rate per unit 15 cents. And so Finance Committee of One at the time was approved, or is in support of, that was myself, in support of the $1.04 per unit drought rate.
Can I make the motion?
You may.
I accept that.
Very good. Any more discussion or comments from the public?
When does that take effect?
The meters were, so the $1.04 will show up on the June 1st bill.
Okay. So we will avoid
Because
any
we were
dollar
inside the
fifty
30
charge.
day, we were inside the 30-day notice up until the 21st.
Okay. And we are going down, so, yeah, so that makes sense.
Thank you. Questions about these, does this rate, adjust Centerville's portion at all, or are they still at 25%?
You know, we took Centerville's, portion into consideration when we created the dollar floor.
Okay, so are they paying?
So we're playing the bank as normal
Okay.
until we get true up at the end of the year,
All right.
fiscal year, so a year and a half.
Did we get trued up with Centerville last year because we, you know, they ran a lot of water through there, probably greater than 25%, which has been historically their share. Did we end up
We're
truing that
not
up?
current with Centerville retro billing.
Okay, so they still owe us some money on that.
Potentially. I think there's cases where we've actually given Centerville, credit money back because they've overpaid,
Sure.
so.
Right, thank you.
Very good. So we have a motion from Director Trevor.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Fuss. All in favor?
Aye.
And that'll go into effect on the June 1st bill.
Well, it's in effect now, in theory, but the customers aren't gonna see it until June 1st.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, now for the draft budget review, this is a discussion item, 5C. And this is your, baby, Paul Mesa. Please take us through this proposed budget, if you will. Maybe, to highlight the pluses and minuses of it, or, where you feel most confident in the projections and where you feel.
I feel confident in all the projections
Very good.
for now.
Awesome.
So this is the same budget that we released with the finance committee. There was some modifications. One of them was, where are my notes here? So we added a wage for the general manager. That's the suggested amount. Tax revenue from Shasta County. And looking into that, it looks like in the past we've collected somewhere in the $300,000 range from Shasta County, but it's been declining over the years. We collected just over 100,000 last year.
I have some comments on that. I contacted the auditor's office because you and I had talked about that, and my contention has been that the taxes under this, the taxes general is our part of the 1% property tax. That has been, in the recent past, about $350,000. And you had indicated that you could not find more than about $100,000 or something, or less than that. I spoke to the auditor about this, or the auditor department about this, and it was confirmed that your property tax last year, for 2021, was $374,000. If you didn't receive that, if this company did not receive that, we need to talk to them. But they tell me that they dispersed $374,000. Excuse me, they dispersed $374,000 to Clear Creek Community Services District.
We were broke.
This year, the first installment of the property taxes was already paid, and they have dispersed, according to the auditor's office, they have dispersed $240,000 to us this year so far. And in May, they will be dispersing more from the second installment, which will add up to pretty close to $374 or maybe more per year.
So
If we're not getting that money, something's
they
wrong.
dispersed 750,000 last year?
No,
No.
374,000.
Okay, got this last year.
We received a
It
check.
is, we get, this district, as well as other districts as well, get a portion of the 1% property tax. And that is portioned out at the auditor's office after everything comes in, and then they look at the percentage of the 1% that this district is supposed to get, and they give it to us in 4 installments generally, adding up to, last year, $374,000, and this year, probably the same or more. So the taxes in general that we get, you have in here $100,000, it's a lot more than that. And if we're not seeing that, then we need to take a look at our books to find out where it is, or contact the auditor's office and find out where they're sending it.
So I have called and emailed the auditor's office and not received a phone call back or email. And then 2, I looked into.
You can talk to a lady by the name of Robin. Let me give you her phone number.
I can get that.
I've talked to her.
I can get that after the meeting.
Yeah, okay. I'll get the phone number.
And then I looked in the accounting software, and that's where I got my $100,000 number.
No, 374
And then,
last year.
and then on top of that, the last check we received, that took to the bank, was $16,000 or $17,000. It wasn't like $116,000, it was $16,000.
Wow.
So that's a big difference.
Something's not right, and we need to make it right.
Yeah, good.
Thank you, Irwin.
Good discussion. Yeah, it sounded like, well,
And I'm gonna assume that you knew that number was at that level from previous years when we did receive that money.
Yeah, because it's always turned up on the activity report. It has been over the years, been watching it, it's been growing because property values have been growing. It grows at 1% a year, 2% a year, excuse me.
yeah.
And with sales, it grows even more sometimes. And that amount of property tax that we get has been going up every year.
And that's the same month then when we received that, or should be receiving.
We receive that in 4, according to the auditor's office, in 4 payments during the year. By the time the year's up, it adds up to 374.
4 payments.
Just make
You
a
get
note.
2 payments for the first installment of property taxes, and then 2 payments for the second
Okay,
installment.
let's just make sure we revisit that next time.
like that.
We need to find out what's going on with that, because money's getting lost somewhere. I don't know where, I don't know.
What we said.
It shouldn't be.
So if
We're gonna do better. It's just a matter of time.
Let me give you a Robin's number. Robin's number is 530-225-5199. And I was given to her, and she went through a lot of the paperwork.
What's the total other revenue? Because that's in that, since in that ballpark figure, it's 326. What goes into the total other revenue? That's a pretty big number. That's on
page 2.
Yeah,
Two.
it's under taxes, under taxes and assessments.
General taxes.
All the way
Other revenue, yeah, well,
total other, total other revenue.
oh,
It's all those things together. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, all right, duh.
yeah.
That's about 274,000.
I'm not going. All right, good. I thought it
Anyway, we need to find that money.
thought it was its own line. It makes sense, but it's its own. All right, good. So, Bill, you were in the middle of
Yeah,
explaining.
that's where I was at. I'll take
Yeah.
some questions though. I'm sure there's lots.
Yeah, we did haggle through this on the finance committee meeting, and another item that came up around this was wanting to create the QuickBooks and what have you, a mechanism to take the profit from both the base rate, 1.8%, and the water rate, and have that directed to the reserves, so we can see the reserves growing at that prescribed amount. So however, that would be useful. It probably hasn't been done yet, but just a bug in your ear, it would be good. And the other piece that I've been begging for years is to see the quantity of water used by source by month in the activity report. So,
What's part of your activity report?
huh?
What's part of your activity report?
One of the first pages
That was a
is
separate sheet.
Help me out, it's revenue, it's not quantity. So yeah, we'll go.
No, the volumes are there.
Yeah, the volumes in there.
Well,
Monthly water usage report.
Shame on
Yeah,
me.
that goes along with it.
Yeah.
So that's your breakdown.
Okay, that's not,
You want it, you want it on the profit.
I want it right up with where the revenue is, so I can see, if I can take the revenue, I see the volume, I can go do the math and see that it's the right price.
On the
That's
same
what I
page,
want, on the same, right next to each other.
in the accounting program.
I don't know, it's just an ask.
You want
All right, forget it.
money and water. I understand what you're saying. but
Yeah, I guess I,
it's not gonna
I
happen.
won't, yeah. I guess I just didn't find that page. Has anyone done the math on that? Did anyone in the activity report take the volume and the revenue for a particular portion, a month period, and do the math to make sure that?
Revenue's money coming in for that month. So
Yeah.
that could be for an entire year.
And that doesn't justify, account for people who didn't pay the bill on time.
Yeah, that is
Doesn't show.
challenging.
It's
Gosh, that sucks.
it's never gonna balance.
Yeah. I think I see what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, so you gotta check the formula, you gotta check.
You can plug in a expected amount and then compare it to the actual. And the difference would be the bills are not paid, most likely.
Yeah, you wanna see what those 2,710 customers, what they generated in revenue.
Against what they used.
Yeah,
Based on their actual water usage.
This kind of is a hard check on the math.
yeah, that's not gonna happen. Not in the same program.
Yeah, okay. I guess we can extract that, though, you could probably extract it as just a test, like checking someone's bill. You could say, wow, they used, I guess most people do that on their own. You guys, you're doing that on your own, right? Checking the math? All right, I guess it's being done. All right, my worries are alleviated.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're right.
All right, so we're still diving into this draft budget.
Are we taking questions now?
Let me just scroll up, I thought I had a couple
Don't
of
distract.
questions.
Oh, that's what I said.
Okay.
Maybe you were going to take your time.
I didn't have any questions on the budget. Does the public have questions for the, please take the lectern.
And wait till you get there. Bill, page 2 on the proposed budget. I noticed you took the state loan fee off, that $1 per bill. Where are we on that? Didn't you indicate just a week ago or so that it looked like you might be closing on that fairly soon?
No, actually, that's not taken off of there, it's just, so in order to do this correctly, you have to show the income coming in, and then the expense on the other side, and so if I make it 0, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
You're balancing, okay, but where's the second set of books that shows money collected?
So,
It's a joke.
okay. I was just gonna say, this is for next year, this is starting July 1st.
I understand,
This
I
hasn't happened yet.
understand. It's just that, we had been talking about it, we're collecting money,
Yep.
and, we don't have a grant, loan, whatever yet, and so when I saw that, it was like, oh. 2 other items, question, page 4 near the bottom, debt service interest expense of 85,000, can you explain what debt we're servicing with 85,000 in interest?
That's actually on my list of research, to figure out where that number's come from, so we just plug that in from the previous year's budget.
Okay, I understand the
So we're
dump
good.
truck, trailer and whatnot, but that's nowhere near that. And the other interest on the loans for the filtration plant, backwash, whatnot, they're already accounted for, so I was kind of curious what the 85 additional was. And then the last is the very last item on page 4, retiree medical expenses, $135,000 expected. Where was that number grabbed from?
Right now, it's from the current expense of the district, since
Okay.
everybody's retired now.
All right, so this is strictly the people who reached retirement age,
Correct.
former employees. I think the board should take a look at that for future contracts and other things, and I'm wondering if that, if I'm correct, the prior manager got quite a premium retirement health benefit package. I mean, they are collecting Medicare, and then, I was under the impression it was a few thousand a month was being paid for this individual, lifelong. So the 135 was just, I'm curious as to what it is, how we got that rate, and is there something that the board can do to mitigate some of that in the future? Through negotiating with the union, through contract with another manager, or something. I just want to make sure they're aware of that expense, because that's 3.5% of the budget. And for retired medical, that seems a bit high. I may be off because this is a public entity, but I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention.
Beverly,
Hi, Beverly.
one quick question. So I didn't like your answer with the state loan, that it's not on there. If you're bringing in that money, you have to show it somewhere. So is it actually in the domestic base rates at the very first line? Is it not just $55 in, you've got it showing $65.81? Is that in that calculations for your base rates?
The state loan is separate. It's $1 per.
Oh, okay, so if you go to your base rate on domestic water, your very first line of your budget,
Yeah,
is that just from $55 base rate?
$56 base rate, it goes up in
56 and
July.
change.
Okay, so if that's $56 base rate, where's all the other fees at? Where is that listed? The 1081?
So, yeah, I could, in order to put all that on here, just like the state loan, I would have to make more line items. But so the state loan, I left at 0, because it would be on 0 on both sides, on the income versus the expense. On the filter plant debt repayment, that's there. The backwash pond repayment, that's there. Because those are actually, so right now, the state loan would just be going into, reserves, its own bank account. Not that these aren't going in their own bank account, but they are showing an expense on the other side. So the money is actually leaving the district.
But you don't have to always have an, I'm
Yeah,
not.
this is a budget.
Yeah.
This is a crystal ball.
Right, but it's
A
income,
forecast.
it's income. That's.
But it's not usable income.
Right.
So right now, that dollar is not usable income. And so just because I wanted to keep this as accurate as possible, even though I'm probably off, but
Okay, I'm not an accountant.
neither am I, but
That
I'm
doesn't
learning.
sound right to me.
It could be revisited, maybe if the grant comes.
If we were showing true financials, then yes, but we're not showing that. We're showing what's available to spend.
Were you basing the base rate on the full 2,710 customers?
Yeah, but
But
I
that's
think,
not accurate.
because I think it's 56 and change, and I think I just went with 56. So take $56.
Right, but
Times
you
27
have to
times
take
12.
out a lot of those people who have their meters locked.
And
And,
I think that the 2710 was,
well, they're not paying the 55 though.
the 2710 was,
I'm looking at the 1.831, 120 or whatever, 1.82 million. And you're closer to about 13,859 based on the number of customers that are actually paying a base rate. Unless you're counting customers to eat up some of that who have 2 homes in 1 meter and are paying double base.
yeah.
Okay, so
That's where you get the tool.
That's, I'm trying to figure out.
It's
where you came up
$56.
with that.
It's $56.
It's
Right,
like
so that comes out to
5604,
about
5605.
1.64 million.
No, you take one, I just did the math, if you take the million, 821, 120, and you divide by 2710, divide by 12.
We don't have 2,710 customers.
For forecasting, for forecasting purposes, you should be collecting that, but if you aren't, then yeah, that's a problem, but that's an issue we're gonna address in terms of trying to, sounds like, use that government code that you cited to go try to,
Well, I'm talking about the meters that are inactive.
yeah, well,
They
that's,
don't pay a base rate.
well, yeah, that's an issue too, that should probably go to a finance committee hearing, because if you have a meter, the district has to maintain that service whether water flows through it or not. You're not paying any water rate, but all the infrastructure that keeps that meter there for future use is a liability to the district, and the customer should be supporting the district in terms of keeping that availability, the opportunity to use the water. They should be paying a base rate, in my opinion.
That's Prop 318, isn't it?
No, it's if they have a meter, if they have a service to their facility, then in an instant, they can ask for water. And they don't get charged a capacity fee or anything else. It's just simply, oh, you want water this month, boom, you got water. There's no, you don't get to go on and on. It's like, you can't come on and off your insurance all the time, or anything else. You gotta pay on them to support the district. The district accrues expenses to make sure that meter is ready to go when that customer says, I'd like water tomorrow. Well, then that's the value of your property too. If you're gonna sell it tomorrow, you can say, we're not using that meter right there, but you could if you wanted to. You could abandon your meter. That's a different deal. And then when you turned it back on, you pay a capacity fee and the district would be whole. But if you're just leaving it there, quote, mothball, when actually all the other infrastructure that allows that meter to be usable has to get supported by all of us, it's not fair to piggyback on the other customers that are paying their way.
I understand that, but my point of bringing this up is, since we're dealing with the budget, this number that is expected to be collected will not be collected. That is artificially high at this point.
Well, 2710 base rates is what we were calculating. 2710 base
Yeah.
rates.
Oh, so there are more than 2,710 meters out there.
Correct. There's only 2360-ish meters, but with all the extra homes, mobile homes, those count as those all charge a base rate.
All right, so you're actually, in your calculations, running it at 2,710, and then in addition to that, are another 80 to 100?
Yeah, I think
That are
it's
locked
60,
off?
but they call it 100. No, there's not 100. There's not 100 inactives. And by inactive, I mean a meter in the ground
That's
with it locked. There's not that many.
Okay, well, I'm not sure.
But there's also connections. They're not an actual physical connection, but where people have paid their capacity fees, but they're getting by. They're skating by not having that meter in the ground, they're not paying their fees. So in 10 years, when the $1.88 drops off the bill, the WIN Act, and everybody else has paid for it, they come in looking good, like, I didn't have to pay for none of that. So that's not fair.
Sandy Winters, our meters, you don't just turn them on and off. Years ago, we all built our own key handles, and we go to the main line and turn it off when we had to make repairs, because most of us didn't even have shut-off valves when we got our lines hooked up to our property. You have to go turn off the pipe that comes off of the main line with that big key handle thing. And, it wasn't that easy. Mine, you have to use a metal detector to find out where it's at, because, when they disc the olive orchards, they cover it over. One of these days, I think they're gonna probably tear it out. That's gonna be a lot of water loss.
Okay. We got off on a tangent a bit.
If I
Shame
may.
on me.
if I may, it sounds to me like what Bill has is a working budget, where you're talking about the people who are using water, who are paying customers. That's what we're basing this, draft budget upon.
And that's just, if everybody pays their bill, that's at 100% collect. And I just forecasted, I guess, an amount of water that will be available to sell. But, that should be correct.
And that's good, that's fair, thank you.
All right. And we'll be able to compare, what the actuals of last year, some point, I guess that would be in, that's the June 2021 activity report for the actual week,
That's the question.
That would be year end.
year end, like the December should reflect how close we were to this million, somewhere in the ballpark, whether or not we got close. That'd be worth looking at. If we're worried they're gonna have a big budget shortfall, I think it looks pretty darn reasonable, to me, that we're gonna be able to connect the dots and stay whole and put away some reserves. All right, any other discussion?
No.
Okay. Joanna? Mercy? Uncle? Okay, great. Let's see here, so let's go on to the 5D, declaration of surplus items, the 2,700 and the 275 gallon totes. A discussion action item. I'm not sure how this ended up on the agenda, but.
Well, it's supposed to be quick, and the surplus policy says I'm supposed to present the board with a list of things we want to surplus, and that's your list. And,
I think it's great.
the policy says that, we have to set the price, they go for sale in the open market.
Okay.
And there's been a few community members that have approached us and said they could use them for
Are these,
water.
why are these surplus?
Because we get the water treatment plant chemicals, liquid chemicals in them, and the supplier doesn't really want them back.
Doesn't really, do we have a deposit associated with those?
So it's zero now,
Okay. So it's hidden in the fee?
probably.
Yeah.
I'm sure some we're paying for.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know what that is, so at least
We're not getting that out of them. It's,
you think that,
we pay, $2 a pound delivered for the stuff, and
what do you think the totes, what do you think, my point is, if we buy a tote, are we being charged $200 for the tote?
I think
Or
they're
are
going
we being
to
charged
farms
for
like
50 or?
$50 to $100, $75. I see them all the time for sale.
In the packet, he mentions 50 to 75.
I understand that. I'm wondering what we're being charged when, it'd be a good question to ask the chemical company. By the way, what are you charging us for the tote, which is
It's free.
delivered? Well, it's hidden in the price.
Yeah, but they're not gonna tell you, cause you say it's free.
It's included.
You go to McDonald's, you buy a $1 soda, the cost of the cup's included in the soda. Yeah,
We're paying $20,000 for delivery of that stuff. I mean, that's pennies. The cost of those things. Call it, I mean, yeah, I pay $100 or $200, but
Okay.
that's not what they're worth.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Are these worth anything? I mean, will people buy them?
Yes.
Yes.
They will, okay.
I've seen them on Craigslist.
Hey,
Yes.
do we auction them off?
Yes.
Is that kind of demand?
You have the capital.
Change it to an auction.
Why not?
In the
We'll do it right
past,
now.
The district has just given them out, but you signed a form saying you would not sell it, it was for personal use only. I was given 2 years ago. So, and so historically, they've been given away
all right.
as surplus. I'm not saying you have to do that now, but that's some perspective.
Preventing the flipping. Someone buying it and then turning it
Right.
into
Yeah, trying
advertising.
to advertise it, sell it on there.
Yeah.
Well,
Sounds
if you
like
buy
a boom.
something.
How are you gonna
in the
trace
town-
that?
I don't know. That was
I'll buy it.
Skipper's
I'll
policy.
go down and sell it.
Did you, submit your resignation?
Okay,
Sorry.
so do we have is there a motion on this item?
Yeah.
What's your motion?
That we sell the totes,
Do you have a price?
or
on it?
whatever
You had a suggested price, right?
Yes.
$75, is that what it says?
50 to 75 was what it said in the packet.
75.
50 to 75,
Did you guys-
as a suggestion.
I would also like to say that if we have anything else we'd like to get rid of, I think we should sell it.
$75 to $100, but the board can set it at whatever, just make that.
That's why I was asking for some to tether a number to, so that it wasn't completely
I think
irrational.
75 is a bit.
50.
How much is the hot dog?
Okay, so we're talking about 75 with the public like to comment on the price.
Do I have a price?
50 cents.
They have to be washed out though before you
They
actually
are.
Yes, they do.
water.
They're
They're
already-
already washed.
They're already washed out.
They're
We'll
already
wa- We can wash it out again.
Don't do it.
My question was price, is 75.
Right, sorry.
Sounds like there's an appetite for
75 sounds good to me. I'll buy a
Let's
couple.
leave it at 75.
50 does sound a lot better.
It's in there.
$100 piece. We have a motion.
$75?
Yeah.
So,
She made a motion for 75.
I second, I thought you said 175.
How about 25?
No, 75.
We need the money.
Okay.
Okay, where does the money go?
There's only 8 of them.
The general fund.
No, I think it should go into,
The treatment plant. Yeah.
The filter, they're replacing a filter. That's the 50-pound sack of
That might
sand.
pay the shipping.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Trenery for a $75 tote disposal fee.
Second.
All in favor?
right,
Okay.
Good.
Okay, just folks for some.
How can I get a hold of you of those?
Item 6, Operations Administration, Operations Report, list of concerns with the HVCC.
Okay.
Operations, so, that would be, Bill, do you want to go through the list of items and just tick them off?
Yeah, so part of the operations report included the response to a list of concerns from the HVCC, which I put in the packet. And, I can take questions. I wasn't necessarily gonna read the whole thing, but, I'd be more than happy to take some questions, but also part of my report is everything, well, not everything, some of the highlights that we've been up to, some things.
Yes, tell us about the highlights.
The plant's barely making any water, which is really tough to run when it's off more than it is on. We're waiting for the magical algae bloom to hit the treatment plant.
That's when things warm up and the lake turns over? Or?
Yeah, it's usually when we get some rain, because the burn scar, the whole watershed burned. So any sort of significant, well, I should say, a lot of rain now, because
November.
the watershed is starting to, the hillside is starting to grow back. So we do get some runoff, feeds the lake, that nutrients, and we get algae. There's gonna be a pulse flow,
Yes.
June 17th to June 25th. I've, raised some concerns, but it's probably not gonna do any good. So they're gonna dump 3,000 acre feet instead of 6,200 acre feet. The well number 3, we had to replace the breaker.
Put your sign down.
Okay.
There's also a soft start drive that's been ordered because it's starting to go out.
What's the lead time on that?
They said 4 to 6 weeks.
Was there a bump on the price, or is it, did you get a decent price on it?
Yeah, we looked at both electricians that we use and we went with the least expensive one. And the price tag's $6,000 installed. That's off the top of my head.
Okay.
For a drive, which is like a box, a transformer. Big leads go into it and leads come out. Field staff has been working on scheduling repairs throughout the district as time allows and budget allows. And there was a concern about valves that don't work. Valves that don't work are high on the priority list, but some of them cost a lot of money. For instance, the one across the street that we've talked about was, I think, $85,000 or $90,000 to replace a couple months ago. So we're guessing it's probably more like $100,000 to replace that valve now.
What size is that valve, do you know?
30-inch. 24-inch valve.
24 inch.
And it's deep, the excavation will be huge,
Yeah.
several hundred yards of material that's gonna have to get removed.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah,
Define deep. 20 feet.
10 feet, the excavation will be 10 to 12 feet deep.
Wow.
So you'll have to shore it up.
Actually, we looked at a contractor doing it with a bigger excavator just to get it done. Something of that size to get the whole, everybody over there, including myself, to work on something like that. Doesn't do any good. If something else goes wrong, then we're pulling staff off of that, that'll never get done. So that price tag, what is a contractor doing to something like that?
Was short.
Of course.
Yeah.
Starting May 20th, so when the bill goes out next week, customers will have till the 20th to pay the bill, and then we'll start doing the whole late fee thing again. And that bill will be due, once it's 60 days late, then customers will get a delinquent notice. And they'll have 10 days to make that payment or set up an arrangement. Customers that don't comply will get a 24-hour door notice and have their water shut off. So we're gonna start doing that now. And some delinquent notices have gone out already for the arrears. People that were on the arrears had so many days to set up a payment plan or contact the office. And the ones that didn't have already gotten notice. And Sally's one of the volunteers, and she's been helping a lot with that. Actually, lately been doing most of that. So thank you, Sally. The audit started, and we're just working with the auditors. The CCR, the Consumer Confidence Report, which there's a few copies left right here, has been completed, and that'll go out in the customer's bills. And down to the list of questions that the HVCC had. And I can answer any questions that anybody might have regarding that list of concerns.
Doesn't the board have some questions?
I don't know. I mean, anybody.
So just under number one, Beverly again, just under number one, Bill has shown you that you collected, in error, $19,743 from us. So that's a concern. So it's what you propose to do with that $19,000. I did go back and look at my, bills, and to see, and that 2.5 cents is not on my bill at all. So there was no ag 2.5 cents came off of my bill. I went back months and looked and calculated. So,
Was the 5 cents on their bill?
no.
No.
So-
5 cents is on mine.
Yeah, well, that's M and I'm ag.
Yeah.
So it was not on my bill at all. And it said it was supposed to be, but it never did happen. It never did.
By the way, he just skipped, just lumped it in.
No, I broke it down. I broke it down by my acreage.
Okay, well, that was on our.
Which year are we in?
This is before the new rates took place.
Okay, so this is some of that.
And we're looking at my bills here, I'm looking at, from the first of the year, this year. And my bills show the 5 cents, was under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, CVP, 5 cents per 100 cubic foot, from January to this past month. And this past month, it was not on there, because you had said it finally dropped off. Now, I don't know how long it's been on before the January, probably was on last month.
Well, going backwards, it was on there up until we reprogrammed for the rates, and all those line items were on the first bill, just to work out all the bugs, but it shouldn't have been on there, it continued on there for a few more months up until the bill that came out March first.
And it all adds up to 19,000?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, I see. So, I guess the question is from you, what are you gonna do with the 19,000?
Yes,
So how do we get it back to the customers?
Well, either that or what else is there to do?
My suggestion would be, once we start getting CDP water from the Bureau, is just not charging the customers for a while.
There you go.
But
Credit.
that's up to the board to discuss with the public. That's just my suggestion.
It's not bad.
Yeah, credit would be,
If we did that, that would just, it'd be the means with which to make sure it happened in the right amount. So you need to, right, you have to, how would we manage that occurring, that's that date uncertain, next time we have Bureau water, just that date uncertain.
well, we will get there.
Yeah.
Do we know exactly how many, wow, and you have a number of months, do we know how many months?
Until we get Bureau water?
No, how many months that the error was occurring, so do we have 3?
Yeah.
Is it 4?
There's
We
a
know
No more than that.
12 months?
It was different from Ag and I, but there is
So,
so it was 2021 when we lost all our water, right? We only had 453.
Right.
July of 21 was
July.
the first year we did not have any CDP water, first CDP water. Well, therein lies the question, what are we gonna do when we have surface water from the Bureau and we fire up the wells? How do we blend? I'm just complicating it.
it would just,
Oh,
it'd be built into the rate. It would just be built into the, proportionately, it'd be built into the rate. But you'd have to have your estimate how much well water you're gonna use, pretty accurate. It's all about forecasting that bit, it's a bit of this, but,
What if we have a fire?
So the CDP would be adjusted.
I don't know how if you went back and, we need to know how much per customer was owed, and it might be
To
better.
get it exact, yes.
Yeah. And then you would, because otherwise it's just gonna be some arbitrary, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's gonna be some action that may or may not make people whole. May harm the district, may not, it's strikes me that what we wanna do is hire someone for $20,000 to solve the $19,000 problem.
I would like to donate mine back to the
But we could have that,
CC.
we could make that as a point of beginning. We could ask folks if they were willing to donate back their, you could estimate that. We could take their use and say, okay, I mean, I don't know, over 4 months, 2,700 customers, we're gonna have an answer here pretty quick. What that number is, would you, because you make that donation down at Rite Aid for,
You can
any
deduct
number,
it.
it might be about 15, or some number that's quite low. And people may just be willing to donate it back, it would resolve the problem. The problem's been raised, we need some mechanism to address it responsibly, hopefully as efficiently as possible. But I like that idea, the donation back, Joanna, that's a good one, as a point of beginning. And then we can, the folks that haven't agreed, we can do the calculation and, I guess, send them a check.
Put the Trinity PUD overpayment too on there.
13 and change,
13 cents?
$13 and change
Okay.
per customer for 9 months, July through, March?
To get to $19,000?
No, that per customer,
For all 9
for the
months?
5 cents based on the
For all
29
nine.
units available.
For all 9 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Was
it's
it
a total.
9 months?
Yeah.
9 months.
Okay, so,
Well, since the first of the year, mine's been about less than $2, so I'll donate it back.
if you stop and think about the paint is sent out and somebody putting the check in, what's it gonna cost us to
Well,
give them back a few?
If the demand is to correct the problem, then if we make an error that is, if we make an error as a responsible entity, and we made an error of $20,000 or
Right.
$50,000, it costs us $70,000 to correct it.
Yeah,
Regardless, you have to make the correction. I mean,
well, then just put a notice in the newsletter and saying, hey, if you want your $1.45 or whatever, $13, okay, come to the water company, we'll write you a check. Or we can deduct it off your next.
About adding, deducting off their bill.
I think
Yeah.
it'd just be
Yeah,
easier to
take it
put
off
credit
the
on
bill.
each person's
Yeah.
bill.
Yeah.
there is, did the CBP go to the wind fund?
No.
What was that piece that
That's
paid?
what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, there was no ag payments historically to that fund. The excess, to be clear, the excess 217 that made our first payment to the Win Act was entirely M&I. And the amount that was paid, so ag customers historically hadn't contributed to that. Their light $217,000 to the Win Act contract. Because that first payment was entirely M&I. So we will need to resolve that issue as well.
Well, but, we were, we charged double base fee. We were paying 2 base fees every month for years.
If the line item is restoration fee to the Bureau, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that excess that the Bureau collected over those years was what we used as a credit, I think you could probably do the math. You could make the ag folks whole just by establishing a fund that's to be collected at a future date of, say the ag restoration fee error was $15,000, you could say, okay, there's an outstanding fee that needs to be paid in the tune of $202,000 by ag customers for the M&I contribution to the first Win Act payment, and then just make the M&I customers whole by crediting their account $13. And then we'll take the accounting from there.
Yeah, that won't happen.
That's a way to resolve it.
Well, then pay me back, the double base fee, that second base fee I paid for years, every single month. Why don't you pay me back?
That's not, that's separate, that's separate than the restoration
We
fee.
can't,
You could take that and apply it towards that. I think the board chose not to do it for some reason.
I know that the $217,000 first payment from the Win Act came entirely from M&I customers. And if was supported by a restoration fee that was waived for whatever reason by the board over all those years for ag folks,
So it wasn't.
that's just some of that spilled milk that happened over the years that it makes it very, to me, it makes it very, very complicated to drag the historical kind of mismanagement that occurred up until recently.
If you go.
And try to remedy, you know what I mean? It's like it's just been a mess up until where we are now. And we can drag skeletons out and talk about all the wrongs, because they're numerous. But eventually, I think what you have to do is screw up. And, the spilled milk, you let the cat drink it, and you gotta move on. I don't know what to do about that sorts of thing. It just becomes, I understand the complaint. I agree, it's shocking.
Yeah, it needs to be.
But I don't know how
discussed,
to,
that's fine.
I don't know an efficient way to, address it. The 12 cents per HCF for those thousands of years, or whatever the hell it was, is more troubling to me than the rollover of, because that's many more thousands of dollars paid than this $19,000 thing. We're not gonna go down the path of trying to find that, remedy that, years back, just chasing.
Well, we were gonna do
Accounting
the six
systems
months
for-
worth from December to June or July of the 12 cents when it was wrongly increased from 3 cents.
Which is
to
the
12
19,000 that you're.
No,
No,
no, that's two different projects, two different.
Restoration, Trinity PUD, two separate.
Two separate things.
Yeah,
Everybody
PUD was
decides
the,
PUD.
it was the super small number that was magically made 12 cents.
Correct.
Yeah.
That,
But,
there's a lot of bygones be bygones on that one, I think.
well, the
But the
board.
issue now is the restoration fee that was attached to well water.
Right, that's just another one that we've come up with, but.
And the restoration, and I'm just bringing up the fact that the restoration fee supports the WIN Act repayment. And I just want everyone to be clear, the first $217,000 payment to the WIN Act was entirely M&I customers. I just want to be clear.
I don't understand that.
That was the only credit that was available to the district when the Bureau made their calculations.
That was $50,000, wasn't it?
There is an $826,000 bill. And we said, wow, we can't make our first payment. And they go, well, look, they opened up their books and they're trying to figure out what sorts of contributions have been already made to the fund through the restoration fee. And they said, lo and behold, there's $217,000 available from the M&I folks.
207,952.
207,952.
Okay.
And I thought, well, gosh, that's our first payment. And I quite frankly didn't care that M&I had made the ante. I was more interested in securing our contract. But if we're gonna do a full accounting of all this, when I hear $19,000 and people wringing their hands over that, and which is an error, and I think we'll make it whole. But if we're gonna make it, then we need to do the rest of the accounting. And I think M&I customers might be interested in not having to pay, more than their proportionate share of the restoration.
I guess that depends upon what the overpayment really was, but I wanna clarify something. If you go back and look at your rate charts, for over the years, it says just listen, it says right in there, the Bureau of Reclamation has waived the ag fee of 2.5 cents. The Bureau of Reclamation did that, the board didn't do that, the Bureau of Reclamation waived the ag people being charged that.
Some proclamation by this district along those lines, I would question whether or not that statement was even correct. I would have to hear that from the Bureau of Reclamation.
Okay.
Not this district made so many errors and made so many misstatements that I wouldn't bank on any of those statements. And I guess I want to make, I'm sorry, everyone, but I think that we need to, I think we should correct the 19,000, and I think we need to move on. That's what I think.
Well, you have to correct the Trinity PUD, you already voted on doing that too, so.
Okay,
but
let's
we
do that
can
too.
So, go ahead, Chuck.
At some point, we gotta turn the page.
My question is that this was brought up, I remember it was being brought up. And was there an attempt, a legitimate attempt, an attempt by the board, attempt by the management, in order to try and correct this? And that's, maybe that's a good point for us to try and agree on. Whether, let's say, we did our due diligence on this end, as best as we can, and then as soon as we knew that, did we try and fix it? So that it didn't carry on.
Yeah, the PUD charge, that was raised. So do we have a dollar amount on the PUD?
I didn't come prepared for a dollar amount.
Okay, well then but it was, do we know the number of months? It was where it was raised in a meeting and we said, wow, it's gotta change, and you killed it. And then we agreed we true up over a certain number of
So
times.
the egregious error happened in December of 2020, where it went from 3 cents to 12 cents. that the board did not vote on or approve for the 12 cents. It wasn't even in line with the cost of living, the 1.9%. So
December
by
2020.
So from December to June or December to July, you finally took it off of there saying, okay, we're gonna remove it because we've collected too much money. I found under one of the rate charts back in 2010, 11, 12, something like that, where it used to be 0.0003 cents being charged for the PUD, and it got changed to 0.03. So for 10, 12 years, you were charging the wrong amount for the 100 cubic feet instead of, because the,
In lieu of a Prop 218 process.
well, not even, that's even,
What-
yeah, neither here nor there with that, but that was changed, I think, in error. I think that was a mistake. I just think they dropped a 0.0 and made a 0.03 as 3 cents per 100 cubic feet, when we're only being charged by acre feet. So neither here nor there, but it was by January or February, we knew that that 12 cents was wrong.
Yep.
And we were asking from the get-go for that to be fixed.
Okay.
But I wasn't coming prepared to talk about that either. But
Along those lines, could you, Bill, come up with a number that the district needs to come up with to correct the goof up of the 12-cent PUD from December 2020 to when it was dropped in July of 2021?
2021.
And so we'll have that number as a future liability that we need to fix. And as part of that, maybe a little bit of a memo to the file, so people can remember the history, how many months, the why. Likewise with this $19,000, we need to keep track of the number of months and the factors that caused the error, so that retrospectively we can reapply revenue that we collect currently and direct it back to the customers at the adequate rates. I think that's what we do. We get a lump sum, we redistribute it. It's going to be an exercise. I mean, I don't know when that's going to happen, but it does need to happen. And so maybe it would be maybe we could set a goal of getting it done. Could we get a goal of getting it done by how many months, Chief? 6 months? 4 months? Chad looks like he could be doing it right now.
I think the easiest thing to do with all of this is to have the programmers write a program for a global refund to everybody's bill.
Would it be, is it proportionate though? Would they know?
That's
Because
the only
each
way to
customer is a
make
little different.
That's the only way to make it proportionate, other than doing it by hand for every.
Well, that's what I mean. You're gonna reimburse more to some people. And
You're gonna
less.
have switched accounts, you got people that moved out. Yeah.
Well, and that's where I think this whole thing becomes rhetorical.
Maybe we do a scholarship foundation and put it in that. I don't know.
Well,
But you can see that how complicated
it
this
goes
is.
into, the money simply goes into the WIN Act. We're paying, we're making these payments, whether it was ag, whether it was M&I, it's all the same thing. It's a bill that the district needs to pay.
I like that.
So are you suggesting that
We've got a lot of dedicated funds. We were talking about another dedicated fund earlier. I forget what that was. Well, like the trucks, okay, there's a small item. Bill's suggestion was that would go towards the filtration plan, and that's agreed. So this $19,000, that's money kitty to pay the when that next $50,000
Yeah, but
payment comes up.
But each customer that got the wrong bill has to agree to that, and we can't agree for all those other customers. That's just adding another kind of unilateral decision that's not fair. to-
Well,
What
the
do you
board
feel
I think the
about
board can make that
That's
decision.
this is a minority of the customers.
I don't
Put it
know.
out, put it out as a memo.
Okay, I have something to say really quick, because some of us can pay our bills, but we have the fixed income, those that are living off of under, say, $1,200 a month. And I have a feeling that they would like to have the money.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And
Yeah.
then there are some of us that think some of these ideas that you're coming up are fantastic.
you know, to get our WINAC bill down and all this, but we do have quite a variety of people in our community.
Agreed.
With what's
So-
being said,
So along those lines, back to this idea of determining what the lump sum is, right? We know, you find out what the lump sum is, I think you do, if it sounds reasonable, because I think this is as close as we can get to it. You do a proportionate reimbursement to each customer if they want. So it's, at least we're not doing it by hand. And
That is by hand.
is that by hand too?
Yeah.
Yes,
What was the idea with the
I'd have
program?
to have them write a program to do it.
Well, I don't want to,
Yeah,
I mean, we can hire someone to do it for half a year.
I like Chuck's.
I mean, I don't want to do that either, you know,
I like Chuck's idea.
Whoever wants a refund, we put out a notice, 2 letters.
I think this is a good thing for the finance committee to talk about again.
yeah.
it's not a, put it on till.
Why don't you give me kind of a deal, because you,
Well, finance committee got a lot to do.
we have been taken down the road quite a while.
drug.
Yeah, it's right.
Yes.
And we're screaming now.
I'm with you, yeah, I understand.
So, yeah, you find an easy way out of it, and take the money, and never give a second thought, but we've been here.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. That's why I think we should find out what the lump sums are.
Okay.
And I like Chuck's idea of
Win.
leaving it, let's just take it to the finance committee, but I do like that idea of letting each customer make that decision. Say, yes, you are due this amount. Or you could just send it to them. I mean, just true up, when we took it in, we sent it back, we just send it to them.
And then the cost of the check and the mailing,
Yeah.
that eats into.
All right,
Okay, I've got two more things on this letter to talk about. So, the last item was that 38 cents, and so I just wanna make sure that the board just recognizes the way that that was added on was incorrect,
I'm not sure it is.
okay?
I'm not sure it is incorrect.
Okay,
And let me explain why.
okay,
Okay. First of all, the reason why we had that loan was because the state of California came to this district and said, you cannot discharge water out of those ponds anymore into Clear Creek. You have to take all of that water and put it back into the water treatment plant and send it back to the customer. We couldn't do it. And we said, okay, how do we go about doing this? And the state said, hire a contractor and get it done. Well, they cost money. Cost money to do that. And so we had to do it. We had to go out and get that loan and to pay for that project to be done. Who's gonna pay for that loan? Us, the customers.
so you said it correctly, it's a loan, and under Prop 218, when you add a fee or a loan to the
rate structure.
the rate structures, you have to go through a Prop 218 hearing.
The problem with that, Beverly, is, and I'll grant you that that's a possibility. But the problem with that is, we had to do the job. We didn't want to, we did not want to do that. We had to do that job. The state of California said, you do that. And, let me finish, please. We did that. If we would have taken that to a Prop 218 hearing, and the people said, no, we don't wanna pay for that, who's gonna pay the loan?
The district.
what years are we talking about? What year
Started in
time period?
2019.
The district is you.
That's when we had to do the backwash? The very first time that showed up. So it's not the current rate structure. This is a retrospective true
Yeah,
up.
this goes back several years.
My concern is that I wanted the board to recognize that the whole Prop 218 has been done wrong for years, 5 years max, that's CCI, 5 years. But here, 2 years ago, or 3 years now, 2019, when you first came to us asking for a pay raise or a bill raise, and Skip talked about it in May and about adding it in there, and it'll be added because we're doing a Prop 218. And that was his whole thing. We're gonna be able to add this in because it's a Prop 218 hearing. And then in June in 2019, you guys all said, okay, we'll back off for just a little bit. Things aren't right with the paper and the rates and things were wrong. But yet in July, here, this
Yeah.
38 cents came on board.
I just want to be clear, I just want, for the public that might be watching this, that they understand that we're talking about a time period and a rate structure prior to the one that we're currently operating. Just to be clear.
Yes, it is. It's been
So
approved.
so there's not a misunderstanding that,
It's-
hey, we're now working under some nefarious
Right.
rate plan.
Correct. It's been, we did it properly in August of last year. We're good to go.
Okay,
But it was not handled correctly, and you're going, okay, and that's why that dollar state loan thing just hit me wrong, it's like, well, if we did this wrong, are we doing this wrong? And so we had to go and look at if that was done incorrectly, but it does say it was for a loan or
future,
reserve,
yeah,
so that's fine.
reserve for a future loan.
So the last page, the very last page, I think in the booklet, unless there was more, gave the CCI rate structure, do you have that in front of you? The exhibit A?
Of which, I'm sorry, which
Uh,
document?
The last couple pages of the packet.
Yeah, I think it might have been.
I thought we dropped the CCI, didn't we? I remember a meeting,
Yes,
more than a year ago.
yeah, as I'm saying,
Which rate structure are we on? Are we under
This
the
is
rate
still
structure
the
that
two-
preceded,
the 2019,
the one that preceded this rate structure? So this is,
no, we had another one in 2020, when it went from 3 cents to 12 cents on some other things. But the whole point of this is that when I was standing here looking at this, it's, Bill, if you've got yours in front of you, it's got the Win Act on there. It has that we're supposed to be collecting $1.50 off the Win Act. I don't think we've ever paid that.
We never did.
So anyways, it's on this sheet saying that it increased.
No, but we never charged for it.
But I'm just saying it's on this form.
We never
And so
charged.
it was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't recall seeing it on our
what's the
bill.
date on that form?
This is the one that was done in July
2020,
of 2019.
2019.
Okay, from the 2019 billing, okay.
So you got, so you can
I know, I
It
understand.
says 150, we never did charge.
yeah, so I just happened to see that just now, so it
I'm
just,
not sure what to make.
all right, I'm done. Oh, one more thing. One of the questions on there was the general election and who was going to be, who would run again. So Dave, we know, has resigned. So Johanna, are you planning on running in?
Only if nobody signs up.
So you'll have to know at the very last minute then. Yep. So, okay, thank you.
While we're on that subject, I will tell you this, that as far as 2 seats are up for election in November, and the filing period starts on July 18th, and it goes until August 12th. So if anybody wants to run,
We should put a flyer in the bill.
we can put that in the bill.
Yeah.
We can put that in
Yeah,
as
the
a
newsletter, yeah.
But
It's on the
if anybody wants to run, and you can call the registrar of voters to find this out. I mean, if you're really interested in serving on this board, you ought to know something about it. So, I mean, that makes sense. So, July 18th is the date to file, and you have until August 12th.
And they'll guide you through the paperwork smoothly.
Okay, so Beverly, a follow-up question, if you will. I'm not sure, was there and I didn't memorize the letter, was there an ask relative to these malfeasances that occurred in the previous rate proposals and rate changes? Did you have an ask?
I did not have an ask, I had a share.
Okay.
That I want to
alright.
make sure that we don't do this again.
I acknowledge that, and I appreciate you raising that, and I probably took some of that feedback the wrong way, like, here comes an ask, and I missed you on that, so I appreciate that, and absolutely, we don't want to be making these mistakes again, and of course, the engagement from you and others helps with that, so appreciate that. Okay, so we're gonna get lump sums for the PUD charge, we're gonna get lump sums from the restoration fee charge, and we are gonna true up that because that's current milk that needs to get remedied, so to speak, right? We're gonna take full responsibility of that, good. Sheesh, all right.
Moving on.
Questions and public comments on operations report.
Or that's just in general.
Or general.
Why is that? I'm confused why that ends up there in the agenda.
What should it
I think that,
be? Should it be after the,
I think that you do, I don't know that, I think it shows up once, shows up at the beginning, and we shouldn't do it again. If there's items on the agenda where you have an item that you want to discuss, you should be talking on that item, because where we should be talking about the agenda, you raise issues on the open time about things not on the agenda, and then we work on the agenda. And there's plenty of times to comment.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this has been on our agenda for many, many years.
I know that, but it's
been a
confusing.
tradition.
what if something were to come up?
It's been a tradition, so it really doesn't have to be there. The Brown Act doesn't say that you have to have public comment after the meeting. The Brown Act just says that you have to have public comment, and it's interpreted as before the meeting, and then comment on any item on the agenda.
Yeah, I've been to meetings where they put the open time at the end of the meeting, so that the people that
that's
have
wrong.
business to.
That's wrong.
Yeah?
Yes, it is. If you read them, I'll bring the Brown Act to you next time, but if you read the Brown Act, it does not specifically say that you must have open time at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
But the wording is such that if you interpret it correctly, you're gonna put it at the beginning of the meeting.
Just to be clear, every California State Board of Forestry meeting has the open time comment period exclusively at the meeting. And they have 3 lawyers on their staff, so.
Okay, all right, but I'm just saying, I'll bring it next time
I mean,
to read.
we're lawyering stuff up that's just extraneous as heck. So I would like to just have
Most-
one open time at the beginning of the meeting.
Most
For
public
next
meetings have an open time at the beginning of the meeting.
The board has to decide. It's a board decision.
We make the agenda every month.
Not necessarily the content of the agenda.
We've always had the questions at the end, and it's been a tradition. It's been a tradition.
And I have a public comment at the end before you go to closed session.
Okay. Yeah,
Well, we have the standing
we still want to hear that.
Standing committee reports and general manager vacancy update. So I'd like to go to 6C, standing committee reports, general manager vacancy update.
Okay, we have had 2 ag meetings.
That's good.
And we have it at our regular board meetings. So you canceled it because you had to go somewhere, so we're having it tonight. Well, I asked Bill because it was in the newsletter, could we? And so I think we had a pretty good meeting, talking ideas and everything. And the following Saturday, which was last week, we went to Dragonfly Farm, and it was awesome. And we had new people there, and that was great. So, anyway, I always call him Bill, Chuck. Chuck came up with a good idea, and I'm looking into seeing if a agriculture that sells irrigation would come out and show the people what's available.
In terms of water efficiency kind of stuff? Yeah.
And when turning water off and on,
Yeah,
you know,
Like
different,
soil
because
sensors and all the whole 9 yards?
they have everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what was interesting was I didn't realize that they have those tiny little irrigation pipes, as mine are 1/2 inch. And we saw it at both farms.
I think they might have
Drip
been
system.
Sally, who might have said something about that, but, I mean, all the products, there's a lot of different products.
Yes,
That individual at Dragonfly was organized, what he did was he had a spreadsheet, I don't know if I've got a spreadsheet, but he literally read his water meter
yeah,
daily, if not every other day, and said, he just split it. And so he knew exactly how much water he was using, and what he had was that he had a timer on his, I mean, everything, fruit trees, garden products, and well organized. However, that's a full-time job.
Yes, it was.
And he is a burn, victim out there close to, Cloverdale
Okay.
Road and Clear Creek Road. He was up there on the hill,
Yeah.
and, it's a little windy, it's a little open, let's say, but maybe he likes that because he's got more privacy. But at any rate, he's got a lot of product, and he's able to sell his product.
Yes,
And he
So
also bakes bread.
yes,
Oh, he does everything.
and he has a
Roast
certified
chickens.
kitchen.
And his tomato plants listen to classical music.
Tasty, did you say?
And you should see his plants, they like it.
Well, he also has is it a horticulturist? He's got a professional who helps him with his fruit trees in terms of pruning them.
Yes.
So you're aware of Mr. Mark.
What's
I've
that?
taken
Did he
a
say
number
what
of
it cost a
classes
tree?
myself.
And I hate to say this, but he doesn't care how much he pays for water.
He likes the,
He just wants the water.
yeah.
And so obviously the 2019 year for him makes it so that he can actually keep his trees and do this. Otherwise, without that, without what we've got this year,
You're at 60%.
going to the numbers, he would shut everything down. So for him, this is a real success story, what we've been able to do.
Real quick on that, what happened to Tilth Farms? Why are they selling?
I have no idea, I was gonna
Yeah.
stop and ask them.
What Sally said was that they needed to return to work. That's what they were gonna do.
Oh,
Oh, they had to return to work?
As in, I need to pay the bills.
Oh.
Yeah, the volume of water was too much.
Well, it's time consuming work,
It's the work,
Gas
work.
station.
All those meters need to be
and
checked.
whether they're in
I
whether
think they
someone
came
had a
from
job.
Utah. Yeah, they were in Utah and they're like techs. Yeah, making good income.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry to see them go.
Well, it's sad because one of them, when they bought it, it belonged to, in one of their families
Right,
originally.
right, yeah. So, oh, and the other thing is, we will be picking up the roadsides May the 7th, 8 o'clock. We'll meet at the community center. We always have coffee and a little snickety snack. And if you know a road that's pretty bad, let us know. We can send people over there. And if it should rain,
Please, it will.
it'll be the next Saturday.
The problem that I see with having someone come out and do a demonstration is that I've listened to enough people, and one of the real concerns is the cost. The cost of some of the modern devices. I mean, to some extent, you need to be modern, you need to have the newer equipment.
Right.
Aren't that expensive.
Oh, the timers are not.
Oh, they're
And the
expensive.
other thing that was clear about the timers is the value of the timers, is that then you don't have a leak, or you didn't forget to turn something off.
Right.
Yes.
That one, well, with the water usage, you can't beat that.
So anyway, I have contacted the lady who's got a vineyard, and she makes her own wine. And I thought that would be interesting.
For the next board meeting.
Designated
Now,
drivers.
that's an invitation to go see how
Well, lots
she
of-
did it,
Three.
how she managed to keep her grapes going.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So,
Must put a lot of time into it.
I don't know, I'll have to go see what she's got. Anyway, it probably won't be in the newsletter, but I'll try to get it for the last Saturday of May. So, keep it in mind, and I'll put it on in the water news, on the computer, okay?
Oh, what's that?
And,
The
and
website.
Erwin, did you have a update for the general manager vacancy?
No, but I do believe that, we may have some folks in the audience that might wanna talk about that before we go into closed session about general manager.
So you were gonna give us an update that we might have commented.
Yeah,
We were waiting to hear from you.
Oh, like what
You
we
were gonna
had?
make some phone calls after personnel committee.
Yes, and,
Let's just maybe summarize those.
I can summarize that. But, you want-
that, yeah, we wanted to hear that, and then,
so I did, at the, meeting, and I think you guys got the
Yes.
report.
Yeah, I did get
Yes.
the report, yeah.
And this is the report I made up. But, at the meeting, with the help, and Chuck and I were there, and with the help of, everybody that was there as well, we all had a kind of a joint effort to look at the, people who were, had applied, and instead of identifying each one by name, we gave them a letter from A to F, or G, or whatever it was. There were eight of them. And at the end of the committee meeting, we came up with 3 people who were the next to look at. And then I was directed to call each one of those 3 people before this meeting and to ask them, are you presently employed? What, are you still interested in the position? And what salary range are you looking for? And I did that. I called all 3. And the first one, which was applicant F, he is still employed, and he's still interested in the general manager position. He's requesting a compensation package in the neighborhood of $136,000 a year, including salary and other benefits, whatever they may be. And then I added, as a personal observation in my talking to him, he's a pleasant gentleman on the phone, easy to talk to, good telephone presence, and he has a professional demeanor and very confident in his demeanor. Applicant number 2, contacted applicant E. He is employed at this time in a new position. He's no longer interested in the general manager position. That was the fellow that was from out of town.
Do you have a comment, Bill?
Are we allowed to share that information with they're not yet employees of the district?
With what?
I said, they're not yet
They're
employees
still
of the district.
anonymous to a certain degree, they're anonymous.
It's Mr. E or Miss E.
Okay.
yeah.
And then I contacted applicant G. He is employed at this time in a new position. He's still interested in the general manager position, but he has questions about the position. He explained that he is not certain of the extent of the duties of the job and whether he can adequately handle the position. He needs to know more about what is expected of him in the position.
Didn't he say he worked for 65 grand though?
He is, no. He's requesting a $90,000 minimum salary, annual salary, with increases as time and acquiring experience in the position allows. And my personal observation in talking to him was, he does not display a professional demeanor on the telephone, comes across as somewhat immature and lacking in confidence. That is the extent of what I was asked to do.
Well, that was very depressing.
What?
That was very depressing.
But it is what it is.
Right, so then the board has to decide what you wanna do with that. If you had 8 and 2 of them are kind of flaky, that gives you down to 6, do you sit and interview them all, or do that? We were gonna ask, at our last HBCC, we said, well, we'll wait for your presentation. If one of them backs out, we would really like to see applicant D in.
Applicant which?
D.
D.
D is in David, yeah,
Okay, D, all right.
D. That was the one that pretty much got taken out right away, but we're pretty sure, you know, that this person may not have a lot of experience, but it sounds like he has a lot of administrative experience. And that may be what is needed, not necessarily, the water experience. At this point, my recommendation to you as the board, interview them all, because, you know, call them up, if they're really interested, they'll, you know, agree to an interview. We sent Erwin, the HBCC set up, Sarah Lincoln actually put that together, a list of questions for you. I don't know if Erwin shared that with you all yet.
I did I send that to you? A list of questions?
No.
No.
20 of them.
Yeah, there's an interview matrix. Yeah, there's an interview matrix with it and a list of 20 questions for each, so 5 questions for each board member to ask. So, but that's depressing. I would interview them all at this point, because you just,
Okay.
maybe not the guy from
Well,
Colorado.
like I said, I was told to do this and I did that.
Right.
He's got a job.
We're gonna go into closed session and talk about this. We'll take into consideration D and what, Beverly has talked about.
On the memorandum that Bill put together, there's something on there from the city of Reading about buying water, but it's not on the agenda.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to talk about that. We got sidetracked. So there is an opportunity potentially to purchase, to enter into a transfer agreement with the city of Reading, in the same terms as what we had, with the last agreement. It would not be take or pay, up to 400 acre feet. That number probably gonna go down now after some news I got today. But it would be something that we could consider to have just in case of an emergency.
How far do you think it went down? To 300? 350?
Maybe 200 to 300.
Oh,
I think it's just all talk right now.
yeah.
But the price tag would be $467 an acre foot.
Oh, yeah.
But it would be nice to have in case a well went down or.
So a pay as you go.
Yeah. Correct. We used it, we pay for it.
Don't use it, don't pay.
Correct.
Oh,
It costs us,
That's a good
it costs us nothing to
That's
get
not
into
my
a
question.
transfer agreement.
Yeah, you say $472.
67.
Well, the
That
memorandum,
was in your
Yeah.
memo.
460, I'm pretty sure it's 467, but maybe it's 470.
That was 460.
Okay.
Is this time sensitive to show an interest?
No, they're in no hurry to sign an agreement. But I did mention to the city of Reading I was gonna put it in my memo and bring it to the board.
But this is surface water that would come through the water treatment plant.
Correct.
So on top of the 467, you'd have to add in the,
51.
If we used it.
yeah, right.
There's no reason to add it to the drought rate
No.
and make that go up. If we weren't planning on using it.
Yeah, you need to anticipate the use of it though, because.
Maybe ahead of time, but not
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
If you did it right now, you'd drive your drought rate up to $1.18.
Mm-hmm.
But if you waited, you'd be like $1.23. So you could pay for it and not use it, or you could just pay for it when you're gonna use it.
Yeah, you just need to have enough, 60 days kind of, you need to be able to look over the horizon, I think about 60 days, whether or not you want it, because you need to do it, you'd want to make a drought rate adjustment though, if you were going to. But I like the idea of having it in the bank for insurance.
Yes.
Especially with things that come up and there's having it running booster pumps and all that to get the well, I like that. So what do y'all think? You want to have Bill pursue that?
Yeah, I would think so. And just have it kind of in the bank, so to speak, just in
Yeah,
case.
yeah.
We don't know how water use is gonna be this year. If for some reason or another, the well didn't work the way we wanted it to work, we may need an extra 400 acre feet of water. At any place, just to get through the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot riding on that well, producing a whole bunch of, those wells produce a whole bunch of water.
And then we get penalized for using it.
Yeah.
So it's almost, that's, in the long run,
Yeah, it's not fair, but there it is.
All right, Bill, yeah, I think you should pursue that, with the city of Reading, and, to the maximum quantity they're willing to set aside for us. At the, I think the rate of 462, what the rate we quoted, I forget what it is. 467, that's the going rate. All right.
Can we adjourn to close meeting?
Yes, we may. So now we're going to adjourn to closed session, and we'll be back at a time uncertain.